Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with our last speaker for the day, Professor Henk Kloppers, and he'll address us on estate law.
Thank you so much for the introduction, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the presentation on the LLM in estate law. And I'm going to explain the LLM in estate law by using a short introduction or a short example. So I know that due to the COVID pandemic, many of you might have spent a bit more time at home, possibly a lot more time behind your computers, and maybe sometimes not being as productive and sometimes playing online gaming. Now, imagine you play an online game where you purchase online property for your avatar. For instance, your avatar requires a sword and you buy a sword using your credit card. So what you've done is you've used real money to purchase something in the virtual environment. Now, from an estate planning point of view, the question that we are faced with is, what do we do with that property when you die? Does that property actually become part of your estate? What happens if you sell your sword online? Will you be paying some form of taxes on that sword that you've sold? So basically what we're asking is, what is the extent of your estate? What is included in your estate? And how can we plan your estate? Is there something that we can do with your online sword to remove it from your personal estate? Can it be owned in a trust, for instance? So these are all issues that we will be dealing with in the LLM in estate planning, to bring that more into the virtual environment that we are. We know that traditionally you had a CD collection. The CDs was actual real property. Nowadays you have an iTunes account. The question is, what happens with that iTunes account the day when I die? Can I bequeath that? Does it have a value? So that is the type of interesting issues that we deal with in this particular LLM. So as with all our LLMs, or structured LLMs, this program consists of 5 modules, 4 structured modules, and a mini dissertation of approximately 60 pages. So the first module that you will be taking is the module in financial planning law. LLMB 811 focuses primarily on personal financial planning. Here you will deal with issues regarding insurance, for instance. Coming back to our online example, if you have bought the online sword, can you insure that sword? So we will be dealing with theory regarding insurance. In this module, we will also be dealing with issues regarding retirement planning. What is required to draft a proper budget, and what is the role of budgeting within financial planning? This is a first semester module that is presented by myself and Ms. Naima Gabru. The second module that you will have is also a first semester module, LLMB 812. This is a capita selector in private law and consists of 3 broad subject fields. The first one is the law of succession. In this section of the module, we will be dealing with issues such as the freedom of testation. Am I allowed to bequeath my online sword to whoever I would like to? Or will there be limitations on what I can do with that? The second broad theme deals with the matrimonial property regimes. Coming back to the sword, will that sword form part of our in-community of property estate when I die? Or does it form part of a separate estate outside of the community of property? And the final topic that will be dealt with in this module relates to the law of property. And again, our example perfectly relates to this. Can we consider something like virtual property as a form of property? And if so, what are we allowed to do with that particular property? This module is presented by Professors Marita Carnelli and Professor Vian Erlang, supported by Dr. Anel Guldenhuys, who will deal with the issue of the law of succession. The second or the third module that we will be dealing with, LLMB 871, is one of our core modules. This module is the module on estate planning. Here we will answer the bigger questions of how do you plan your estate? What is the estate planning theory? And what instruments can we use when we plan our estates? These instruments include instruments such as trusts. To what extent can we use a trust as part of our estate planning? And other forms of entities such as companies and closed corporations, or even a mix of the three. How can you structure your estate in such a way that your estate remains as small as possible from an estate duty point? The final module is the LLMB 872 module, which is the tax law module. This module focuses on a variety of taxes. These include personal income tax, donations tax, estate duty, and capital gains tax, to name just a few. In this particular module, we will be focusing on these forms of taxes and how they impact on estate planning. You will be faced with very practical experience, and you will be required to actually plan a personal estate, to make recommendations from where the estate currently is and how to improve the estate in order to lessen these forms of taxes that we've already mentioned. And in this instance, these two modules, estate planning and estate law, speaks to each other. Because the question is, can you plan an estate without looking at the tax side? Or when you're doing planning, do you only focus on tax without looking at the various entities that are available? These two modules are year modules. In other words, you will be required to do assessments throughout the year and only write exam at the end of the year, as opposed to the first two modules, which will be first semester modules. The reason for this structure is, amongst others, to give you time in the second semester to attend to your dissertation. You will be required to do a mini dissertation in any of the four modules that I've just explained, and in any topic within the broader field of these four modules. In other words, you are free to either choose a topic which, for instance, relates to the question of virtual property, or you can deal with issues relating to, for instance, the variation of trusts. All of these broader themes falls within the scope of this particular program. This indicates, ladies and gentlemen, that you have a wide option when it comes to selecting a topic for your mini dissertation. At this stage, I would encourage you to, as soon as you've settled on this particular master's program as your choice for next year, that you start engaging with the presenters within this particular program in order to settle on a topic and start working and researching your topic as soon as possible. I might just mention that the modules, the 2-year modules, in other words, the module on tax law and the module in estate planning, is also presented by Ms. Kabru in collaboration with Professor Jape Kutsia, who is currently a practicing attorney in the Parys region and who has years of experience practically planning estates. So this gives you a broad overview of what we will be doing in every module and just how interesting estate law can be. I bet that you haven't thought about the whole issue regarding virtual property. We deal with traditional issues such as fixed property, but we tend to forget that currently we sit with a whole lot of potential virtual properties which could also be included in your estate. So the estate planning is seen as a holistic estate planning that we do, where we include all the various subjects into the estate planning. I might just mention finally as well that it is recommended that you have some background in either insurance law and very importantly, that you have a background in tax law as well, since tax law forms the basis of the majority of our financial planning. I have been asked, what can you go and do with this master's program, and where will I be able to work when I have completed this particular master's? The answer is that the majority of the financial institutions, in other words, your banks and your insurance companies, all have divisions where financial planning is being done for their clients. These are also referred to in some instances as your fiduciary divisions. So the possibility for work at the financial institutions is definitely there. Also, you do find smaller private practices that focuses on financial planning and the drafting of wills. I might just mention that, for example, something like the drafting of a will is just the introduction to estate planning, and proper estate planning requires much more than simply drafting the will. It requires the work behind the scenes where you do the actual calculations, of which you will do quite a few in this modules, because this is a very practical LLM. Yeah, I think that covers the majority of my presentation.
Ladies and gentlemen, you'll study estate law like nowhere else. It's you heard the professor speak, and the focal areas very, very interesting and far wider reaching than one would expect. Professor, we have a question here on the mode of delivery. If you can perhaps provide a little bit more detail on that. How is the course presented?
Thank you for the question, Geerpia. It is presented as a contact mode of delivery. In other words, we will have contact sessions. However, we must put in the caveat, it depends on what the national circumstances will be at the time. Currently, the program is presented online via various forms of online platforms. But if and when normality returns, we will return to physical contact sessions where the students will be in Potchefstroom, because this is a Potchefstroom contact mode of delivery. And students will be required, since it is a compulsory requirement, that students will have to attend classes in person unless the circumstances does not allow that.
Thank you, Professor. Just another question that's perhaps not related to estate law specifically, but I think it refers to the progression of studies into the postgraduate. If you have an LLB and a postgraduate diploma in labor, will you qualify for the LLM in labor law? And as I have it, the LLB is always a requirement for admission into the LLM.
That is indeed the case. So you require either an LLB or a similar 4-year law degree, and it must be a similar 4-year law degree, such as the BProc, but a full law degree is a requirement for all our structured masters.
We've had a comment here, Professor, that says estate law is actually more interesting than I thought.
Well, that is the purpose of the presentation, and I hope to see everyone in there. It is definitely a growing field here, and we've seen our numbers increase in this particular program over the last few years, especially given the whole fourth industrial revolution that's been referred to, and the notion of going online and virtual property and everything related to that.
Right, Professor, one last question. Closing dates, when should people start with their applications? What are the degree of urgency that they should now move into?
I think the online applications close at the end of October, so the 31st of October. So I would urge everyone to submit their applications before then. However, should you at some stage later decide that you really still want to do a master's, we also always consider late applications as well. So the fact that you're late by a week or so will definitely not disqualify your application. I look at all the applications.
Professor Henk Kloppers, both thank you for the estate law enlightenment that you brought, but also for your role as Deputy Director of the postgraduate program. Thank you so much.